Coming at you from Bellingham, Washington. This is Two Nuts in the Sack. I'm Julie.
And I'm Gavin. Welcome back, folks.
Yes, welcome back.
We hope this episode finds you healthy. With many people losing work and asked to shelter in place, it's a scary time we're living through. We could all use a hero. Hell, we could use as many as we can get. Doctors, nurses, first responders, government officials, and our communities are all doing their best to keep us safe, and their actions should be applauded for their efforts. But tonight, we're going to talk about superheroes. We did a dive into DC superheroes with one of our earlier podcasts, The Cape Crusader, all about Batman. And as to be expected, in the bipartisan geek community, there was a suggestion of Marvel, which is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. The 80-year legacy that has kicked into high gear in recent years, but had humble beginnings. So sit back, relax, and marvel as we explore Marvel. The story begins with Martin Goodman. As America was recovering from the Great Depression, Goodman was in the business of publishing pulp magazines. Inexpensive fiction magazines named for their cheap wood pulp paper they were printed on. They were cheap to buy, quick to read, and people were buying them in droves for entertainment and basic distraction. Seeing the upswing in the sales of detective comics, which later became DC, Goodman wanted to capitalize on this trend. In 1939, on the brink of the Second World War, Goodman launched Timely Publications. The first Timely publication was called Marvel Comics Issue Number 1 in October of 1939. It told the stories of two heroes. The Human Torch, precursor to Johnny Storm, was an android created by scientist Phineas Horton, able to surround his body in flame and control that flame for offense, defense, and flight. The other major story in the issue was that of Namor, the Submariner, whose powers basically laid out the blueprint for DC's Aquaman, whom we've already discussed. But Namor was the first anti-hero, because whilst powerful, he used his powers for his own ends, sometimes lining up with the good side, and as his saga continued, he was sometimes the villain, but ultimately working toward a greater good, no matter the cost. The book was a resounding success, selling nearly 1 million copies, with that, Goodman had all the evidence he needed to keep Timely Productions as timely as possible. He brought in Joe Simon as the first true editor. Both a writer and an artist, Goodman teamed Simon with the extremely talented artist Jack Kirby. As World War II loomed largely in the zeitgeist, Kirby and Simon created Marvel's first patriotic-themed character, Captain America. In 1941, Captain America Comics number 1 was released. Again, nearly 1 million books were sold, and Timely Comics Incorporated was created with comics cover dated starting in April of 1941. It was now an official company.
Very cool.
None of the other characters of this golden age of comics, as it is termed, reached the same notoriety as the original 3. There were some notable heroes that make appearances in comics today, notably Whizzer, a Flash knockoff, not a man who likes to pee in public places. There was Miss America, which is basically Wonder Woman's Marvel equivalent. There was the Destroyer. He was another super soldier, comparable to Captain America, but with a few more bells and whistles. He gets tweaked a little bit later, but we'll get to that. This was notably Stan Lee's first successful character. Also, the original Vision, Arcus, who was arguably the precursor for DC's Martian Manhunter. And lastly, Angel. a non-superpowered superhero. He was an investigator who used a lot of guns to help him solve mysteries. It kind of reminds me of the comedian from Alan Moore's Watchmen.
Yes.
Let's talk about an important young intern at Timely Productions, the cousin-in-law of Martin Goodman, the fresh-faced Stanley Lieber. Tasked with simple office duties, young Stanley was responsible for getting coffee, lunch, refilling the inkwells, sorting and filing Simon and Kirby's finished works. At times, they would allow him to finish unfilled speech bubbles. His passion for the product and his increased interest in writing these marvelous tales, Goodman promoted Stanley Lieber to interim editor after the departure of Joe Simon as editor-in-chief. In the post-war era of the 50s, Timely Publications became Atlas Comics. Superheroes fighting in America's wars became unfashionable. Aside from the fact that we weren't fighting a war, most Americans were choosing to forget the war that had cost so much, going more in favor of horror stories, westerns, silly animal stories, adventures, giant monsters, romance, espionage, even Bible stories. All elements of superhero stories without the superheroes. Mostly the result of one man's crusade to clean up the comics and stop them from, as he put it, seducing the innocent. Dr. Frederick Wertham published a book called Seducing the Innocent, which pushed this issue to the congressional level, which led to the outline of the Comics Code, which led to the creation of the Comics Code Authority. Though not mandatory, it did make publishing easier. Members would submit comics to the CCA, which would screen the comic and apply the CCA seal of approval. For Goodman, this meant that comics would be more widely received. Mothers and fathers could buy comics for their kids, and if he was able to attach the CCA seal of approval, he would sell a lot more comics. Little did he know, he was tying the hands of the editors and artists that were working for Atlas Comics. Over the course of the 50s, comic producers took a major hit. The number of producers went from over 100 to just around 10 to 15 here in America. With restrictions on producers and artists, the comic book business as a whole was feeling a squeeze. None more than Stan Lee. Stanley Lieber's pseudonym applied to mask the shame of being a comic book writer. As the 60s rolled in, Stan the Man Lee was ready to hang up his spurs and leave the genre altogether. It was his wife, Joan, or Joni as Lee referred to her, that reinvigorated the flame she had seen in her husband in bygone years. She encouraged Lee to write the story he wanted to write. Restrictions be damned. His content had been proven time and time again, but his passion for comics had been extinguished. It was time to stoke the flame.
I love that.
So Stan wrote his story. Breaking the standard of a singular hero, he imagined the story of a team of superheroes. A whole team. The Fantastic Four. In November 1961, the first issue of the Fantastic Four rolled out. Jack Kirby illustrated the comic, and what was different about the Fantastic Four was that though not inaccessible to younger readers, it was more clearly written for an older audience. What really set them apart was their social interaction. Unlike the pictures of perfection that superheroes of the past portrayed, strong jawlines, huge muscles, unshakable morality and missions, Lee's characters were more flawed, more human. They argued, held grudges. Superpowers aside, they were just like us. This appealed to the older readers. Characters had depth, and they tackled more adult issues. Enter the Amazing Spider-Man. Still one of Marvel's most popular characters, Peter Parker was an every guy who inherited his powers in a miraculous way, but he still had to live as a person. He doubted his abilities, or his ability to wield them, to save his city from myriad bad guys equally superpowered. But he also had to figure out a way in the midst of saving the innocent to pay his bills, go to school, find love, problems we all have, which made the young hero all the more relatable. Lee, Kirby, and Marvel read the culture and created characters that were superheroes in the real world. Flawed superheroes, freaks and misfits, begging the readers to ask themselves, what would you do if you had superpowers? Because at their core, they were still human. They existed in a universe parallel to ours and dealt with problems that we were dealing with in our own world. The Red Scare, communism, the Cold War, Vietnam. The amalgam of Lee's writing that made his characters insecure yet proving their strength and confidence when put to the test, and Kirby's artwork perfectly portraying the tension and psychedelia of the time propelled Marvel to mass market publication, and the titles rolled out. Hulk, Thor, Ant-Man, Iron Man, the X-Men, the Inhumans, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, the Silver Surfer. The titles went on and on.
I love the Silver Surfer.
Me too. The heroes were plenty and diverse. Race, gender, disability did not matter for a hero to be heroic. It was the content of their character that defined them. Even the Marvel villains mostly operated in a gray area. Dr. Doom, Magneto, Loki, the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, even Galactus, the Eater of Worlds, had humble beginnings as just a man infused with cosmic strength and abilities. His apocalyptic endeavors, aka eating worlds, quite literally, were just more hunger than malice. The multifaceted nature of these Marvel characters appealed to a wide audience. In 1968, Marvel was selling around 50 million books per year. Goodman then sold Marvel Comics to the Perfect Film and Chemical Company. All staff was retained. Goodman himself remained as publisher. By 1971, the United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare approached Stan the Man Lee to write a comic book that dealt with the topic of drug abuse. Again, reading the Times, Lee agreed and wrote a 3-part story arc about the use of abhorrent drugs like heroin and cocaine, warning readers of the dangers of drug abuse. The CCA refused to provide their seal of approval because it was about narcotics.
That's ridiculous.
And was deemed irrelevant. Lee was determined. The government had asked him to publish the comic, yet the Comics Code Authority rebuked the product. The Amazing Spider-Man issues 96 through 98, May through July of 1971, at Lee's urging and Goodman's approval, were published without the CCA seal of approval. Despite the lack of the seal, the comics were a success. The CCA even revised their code the following year, but Marvel was cemented as a comic book company to contend with. In 1972, Martin Goodman retired as publisher. In his place, he installed his son Chip as publisher. After a short period, Chip proved that he was not a chip off the old block, and Stan Lee assumed the position as publisher. Lee appointed Roy Thomas as editor-in-chief. Thomas was a prolific writer, co-creating characters such as Wolverine, Vision, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Ghost Rider, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. Lee and Thomas piloted Marvel over the benchmark, and in 1972, Marvel outsold DC. In 1973, the Perfect Film and Chemical Company changed its name to Cadence Industries, but it was not the only name change within the company. Marvel Comics Group was created to replace Atlas Comics. The 70s were a wild time for Marvel. In 1975, Marvel dabbled in the audio business with a truly horrible, yet perfect for the time, but horrible album titled Spider-Man: Rock Reflections of a Superhero. Stan Lee narrated in between each track, but that was probably the best part of this atrocity. Lee Kirby also served as a narrator on a short-lived radio show about the Fantastic Four, for which Lee adapted some of his and Kirby's early comics to play as a scripted radio show. This was also pretty insufferable when you consider modern times, but I did find out something cool.
What's that?
The voice for Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, was none other than...
Who? Who is it?
Bill Murray.
No fucking way. No way.
It was pre-Saturday Night Live, and he was just an actor looking for his work. You guys can find it on YouTube. It's a nice little gem. But it's definitely Bill effin' Murray.
Wow. That is so cool.
1975 also marked the first year of MarvelCon, a comic book convention announcing the return of Jack Kirby to the Marvel family. In 1976, Marvel went global. Though only having one more MarvelCon, they were able to license reprints in several countries. Lee and Kirby even created an exclusive character for the UK, Captain Britain. This is reminiscent of the Destroyer that Lee had created early in his career. But it was a notable start for Alan Moore.
I'm Captain Britain. Don't laugh at me, Gavin.
He was trying so hard. He had a few more bells and whistles than Captain America, and he was superpowered.
Oh, and he has an accent.
And he has an accent.
And he drinks tea on Tuesdays.
I'm sure he sounded a little bit more like this.
Ooh, serious. In depth. Where are you, Gavin?
I don't know,
Earth to Gavin.
I'm trying.
Earth to Gavin.
We went off script, and now I'm just, lost.
Sorry, get back into it. Okay, find your place.
All right, Alan Moore did the bulk of the writing for Captain Britain. Captain Britain!
Captain Britain!
Basically, any of the great graphic novels written in the last 40 years have been penned by Alan Moore. The Watchmen, V for Vendetta, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Batman the Killing Joke.
Some of my favorite graphic novels.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to gush a little bit. We're gonna have to come back to Alan Moore at some point. Can we do that, sweetie?
Most definitely.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to Alan Moore. In 1978, Jim Shooter was installed as Marvel's editor-in-chief. His 9-year tenure kept Marvel's trajectory as a leading comic producer, shepherding Chris Claremont and John Byrne's run on the Uncanny X-Men, as well as Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. He is credited with steering Marvel into the direct market, selling directly to brick-and-mortar comic book shops, letting the market dictate which books got made, which books got shelved. He also institutionalized creator royalties, giving the artists and writers their due for the creation of content that had helped Marvel grow. He also helped launch Star Comics, a line of comics for children. In 1986, Marvel sold again and became the Marvel Entertainment Group. Then was sold again in 1989 to Revlon.
Wow, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what makeup and comics have to do together, but
wow.
I guess if you see a good product, you'll buy that product right away.
I would have never have known that.
Neither would I, were it not for research.
It's L'Oreal. L'Oreal.
Okay, let's not say that anymore. That's bad. So, in the early 90s, Marvel began to diversify. The Marvel Entertainment Group went public in 1991, which basically meant that they were selling stocks now. They had a successful line of comics known as the 2099 line, and this line of comics took some of Marvel's best-known heroes and villains and placed them far into the future. The Marvel World of Tomorrow, a neat way to revamp the franchise. Spider-Man, the Punisher, Fantastic Four, the X-Men, even Doctor Doom had a run in the 2099 line as an anti-hero. The 2099 line was set in an alternate universe designated Earth 928, a trope that many franchises and even scientists have glommed onto, the multiverse theory, but that's a subject for another time. 1992 dealt a huge blow to Marvel, as 7 of its top creators left to form Image Comics under the Malibu Comics umbrella. The blow was devastating but short-lived. Malibu Comics was purchased by Marvel in 1996, but the comic book industry was suffering and on a steady decline. Despite all of its best efforts, Marvel Entertainment Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 1997, Marvel had to merge with Toy Biz, which rebranded to Marvel Toys and created Marvel Enterprises. In 1998, the company launched the Marvel Knights series of comics, which was really cool.
Sounds cool.
They were tougher, more gritty stories that showcased some of the more obscure characters like Black Panther, the Inhumans, and Daredevil. The imprint was helmed by the soon-to-be editor-in-chief, Joe Quesada. In 2000, Joe became the official editor-in-chief. Marvel Comics had pulled itself out of bankruptcy, but the cost was dire. Many of Marvel's most popular intellectual properties, or IP as they're called in the business, had been sold, basically just to keep the company afloat. Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, the Men in Black, which I didn't even know was a Marvel property.
I didn't know that either.
But the Men in Black were sold during this time. In 2001, Marvel officially withdrew from the Comics Code Authority, establishing its own Marvel rating system. The first book Marvel produced without the CCA seal, really the second because of Stan Lee's little coup in the 70s, was X-Force, number 119, in October of 2001. Marvel also created new imprints, are lines of comics. So it's basically a storyline is called an imprint. Basically, they did Max, a comic line meant for older/adult readers. And then they also created Marvel Adventures, which was like Star Comics, meant for the younger audience, as well as creating a whole new universe imprint, the Ultimate Marvel, to reintroduce the classics into a new generation of comic book fans. Some of Marvel's sold licenses had begun to become popular movies. Some of Marvel's sold licenses had begun to become popular movie franchises. Other studios were cashing in on the cinematic adaptations. The first, Conan the Barbarian and Red Sonja, and Conan the Conqueror. In the late 90s, the Men in Black franchise, which started in 1997, the Blade movie series beginning in 1998, X-Men made it to the silver screen in 2000, and the highest-grossing series, Spider-Man, debuted in 2002. All of these movies were reaching audiences at a greater rate than comic books ever had. They continue to make comics look like a thing of the past. But Marvel keeps putting out comics. But in 2008, Marvel took a big risk and created a new branch of the Marvel family tree, Marvel Studios, and created the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this is where most people pick up, as the success of movies brought Marvel into the limelight. 23 movies and 7 television series later, we find ourselves in the world today. Marvel is entirely owned by Disney, and the world has been riveted by the world.
Disney.
Whatever. Lots of money. That's where they were going.
Yeah.
But the world is riveted by the world of wonder that these creatives have created. Whew, that was more than I wanted to talk about. So that's enough history for now. let's talk about the fun stuff, the litany of characters that the many minds of Marvel have created. You've got a good list of some superheroes ranked by strength. What you got for me, baby?
Yes, I do. Number 10, Captain Marvel. There are several Marvel superheroes. Those super strength falls under the 100 tons or more class, and the strength scale we use for reference doesn't put them in any particular order. We are using some speculation and research to rank the top 10. To start, we have Carol Danvers, who, as Captain Marvel, has quite a few powerful abilities, including super strength. Carol's super strength is actually part of a 50 to 70 tons category, but we think she deserves a ranking, which is why we put her at number 10. Her powers are drawn from a cosmic force, a nearly infinite power. Carol has the power to absorb energy and add it to her own, which can skyrocket her strength beyond 100 plus tons.
Okay, so just to be clear, our top 10 list are the Marvel characters who are able to lift 100 tons or more. And
yes.
Okay. And Captain Marvel is able to do this, but only when she absorbs extra strength.
That's why she's badass.
Right.
The cosmic forces, Gavin. Can you feel them?
Oh yeah, I could smell the girl power coming off.
Flowing through you.
Captain Danvers there. But okay, all right. So number 10, she's still like normally when she's not going like extra super, she's in the 50 to 75 ton category. But when she's like going super, that puts her into the over 100,000 ton or 100 tons category. Yeah?
Yes.
100 plus. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 9, Namor. Namor is often forgotten when it comes to Marvel fans. He has not been seen in the MCU. He is actually pretty powerful and deserves some credit for being one of the strongest Marvel superheroes.
Right, he was one of the first.
Though it is only when he is in his element, Namor's full strength is worth mentioning and puts him in the top 10. The strength scale puts Namor at a weight limit of 75 tons, but it also mentions that he is unmatched underwater, which we think is enough to put him at number 9.
Right, he's Aquaman. If he's in his element, aka under the water.
Yes.
Unmatched.
Namor was the mutant son of a human sea captain and a princess of the mythical undersea kingdom. Not only has super strength, but aquatic abilities, has the power of flight and other superpowers.
Eat your heart out, Aquaman. Namor can fly.
Yep. He can fly. Can you fly? You just a fish, man. You shouldn't be called Aquaman. You should be called Fish Man.
What you do? You breathe underwater and like punch people really hard? I can fucking fly.
Look at my hair. I'm Aquaman.
But in the Aquaman comics, he was a blonde dude.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on. Number 8. One of my favorites, Rogue. This choice may surprise some readers by coming in at number 8. Is the X-Men resident Southern sweetheart Rogue.
Yeah, but she was just like, had that, I mean, like, I just remember from, like, the TV show, she had that, like, Southern accent that was just like, you know, she would call everybody Shug or Sugar.
Most know that
charming as hell.
Most know that Rogue can absorb the life force of any powers of anyone she touches. If she touches someone long enough, she can absorb the powers permanently, which is exactly what happened with Wonder Man. Wonder Man? Oh. I'm sorry, that's such a stupid name, Wonder Man. Oh my god. He was
an early character. They already had like every comic book character under the sun they were trying to create. So I'm sure they just were running a little short on names.
His super strength and flight are still part of her power set, just like Miss Marvel was before him. This made it so Rogue could lift 100 tons and more. The reason we put Rogue just above some of the other 100-ton lifting heroes is that she can further increase her strength by temporarily absorbing the powers of those stronger than her.
Right. She absorbed the Juggernaut's strength at one point in the canon. I don't remember, but it made her very angry and super, super strong.
Right.
All right. What else you got? We're at 7?
Number 7, the Thing. As strong as cosmic power can be, it's no match for brute strength, something that Ben Grimm has in spades, classified by Nick Fury as power level 8.
So yeah, he's number 7, but at power level 8. But he was one of the original Fantastic Four.
The Thing has pushed weight limit to 100 tons and beyond, even shown being able to power a machine meant to move a planet. Oh my god.
You need that planet moved, bub?
Yeah.
I guess bub is Wolverine's thing, but
I'd like to be a little closer to the sun, please.
Hey, it's clobbering time. And then he moves a planet.
We can rank the Thing higher because of his immortality. If he keeps his training, there would be no weight limit he couldn't surpass. This brings us to number 6. I'm gonna laugh. Wonder Man. I can't help it, Wonder Man.
He was a wondrous man. What do you call him?
I don't know.
Jim.
I don't know.
Okay, Wonder Man.
Ro got her strength and flight from Wonder Man, and the real deal himself is actually much stronger than the power-absorbing mutant. Wonder Man's powers come from ionic energy that is tied to and or makes up his body. The nature of his powers isn't always clear. Regardless, his energy gives his body a massive power-up beyond the capabilities of normal humans. One of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength allows him to lift 100 tons or more, depending on who you ask. Wonder Man's powers rival that of Thor.
Oh, but he's puny mortal.
Thor is pretty. He's pretty. That's all I have to say. Shut up, Gavin.
Okay, 5.
Nova. Nova is part of the 100 tons or more category on the strength scale. He can achieve this weight limit by maxing out the Nova
Give him a
energy.
little smooch and he can lift the world.
Shut up. Like as if you haven't messed up something you've read.
Fair enough.
The Nova energy, which is, oh my god, I get so laughing, is what places him above Wonder Man. Nova is essentially living energy. These cosmic energies are as mysterious as they are powerful, often granting whoever is in possession of them infinite powers. Originally, Nova was just a member of the Nova Corps, but now he is the Nova Corps heart of it anyway, housing the power source once used to power the entire Nova Corps within himself. He is essentially living energy, pushing up his ranking.
Right, for those of you lay people, the Nova Corps was the people that protected the Guardians of the Galaxy, the guys in little star-shaped ships. He has a little star-shaped symbol on his helmet, and apparently, with the destruction of the Nova Corps, as per Guardians of the Galaxy, or at least the movie, he is now like one of the last remaining members and gets cosmic energy, which, wouldn't you like a little cosmic energy? I
would love some
use a little
cosmic energy. They should make that a drink. You want a drink of cosmic energy?
It's better than magic.
Yeah.
It's the whiskey to magic's vodka.
Yeah, it's like crack. Number 4, Hercules. Hercules.
Wait a second. Oh,
what?
Okay.
Back
all
it
right.
up. What?
Wait, no. So, okay, this goes back to when Marvel was still in its golden age, and they were putting mythical heroes and like telling old biblical stories and things of that nature. Like that's where Hercules comes into this, because he's a classic Greek hero.
Hercules, being a demigod, puts him at the top of the number. The son of a god and a mortal, Hercules was gifted with the strength of the gods. He is officially the god of raw strength. This would put him at the top of the list if there weren't 3 other characters who just barely outclass him. Hercules is easily one of the top strongest heroes in the Marvel Universe, facing opponents like the Abomination and winning with little to no effort. He is in the 100 tons and up category. But as we already mentioned, that category also includes those with strength that is immeasurable, which is a good description for the half god.
So he's in the 100 and up category, but we don't know how far the up goes.
Right. We don't.
He's if being the god of raw strength. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Totally.
All right. Who else you got?
Number 3, Sentry.
I have no idea who
I
that
have
is.
no idea who that is either. Sentry is basically Marvel's dark answer to Superman. He is a superhero with a ton of superpowers, but is constantly at war with the dark force within, the Void. His strength level is in the 100 plus category. Sentry easily lifts 100 tons with little to no effort. If he pushes himself, he can lift 110 tons or even 150 tons. Holy crap.
That's a lot.
Considering all Sentry's additional powers, he easily ranks in the top 5.
Okay. Well, let's do a look at Sentry.
So he's like dark within himself, man. He's just battling his inner demons.
You should have looked into Sentry.
What?
Said you should have looked into him a little bit more. That sounds pretty damn interesting.
I know, it does interesting, especially since we don't really know much about him. I should have did a deeper dive, you're right.
Let's do that more.
My bad.
Okay.
Sorry, fans. Anyways, at number 2, no surprise, Thor. Thor, the big bad god of thunder, who is thought to be the strongest superhero in the entire Marvel Universe. Well, he's not, but he is close. Thor, who is Asgardian, is already super strong because of that. As a god of Asgard, his strength is unmatched by nearly everyone in the universe. Thor is in the 100 plus tons, unmeasurable category, but that only scratches the surface. Thor has performed feats of strength that would have been impossible for any other superhero, and he did it with ease. I know I say that a lot, but he did. Thor is referred to as being one of the strongest beings in the universe.
Mostly by himself.
And he's pretty. I'll say that again.
That's the MCU saying,
Whatever. And this brings us to last but not least, number 1, no surprise, Hulk.
oh yeah, Hulk smash.
Of course, Hulk is number 1. The Hulk's strength comes from anger, so the angrier he gets, the stronger he becomes, making his power potentially limitless. If that's the case, my power is limitless.
Mine too.
If he were ever to face an opponent, oh my gosh, I can't talk. Opponent stronger than him, he would get angry he's losing, then get the strength to defeat them.
Right, so the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets.
Exactly.
So, good.
So piss him off and you're screwed.
In trouble. Yeah.
His strength being unlimited has been confirmed by 3 very reliable sources. The first was Beyonder, an omnipotent cosmic entity who definitely knows what he's talking about. The second source was Stranger, an entity that created the living planets and supported Beyonder's claim. And the third source was the Mad Thinker. Those calculations all but confirmed that the Hulk is the strongest superhero in the Marvel Universe.
Well, I mean, like, that makes enough sense. It's like, thought is the strongest thing out there, and thought is basically part of your emotion. So the stronger your emotion, the stronger you get, especially in Hulk's case.
I would be really interested in getting feedback from our viewers on this list.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think is wrong? Like, what do you think is right about the list?
Like, do you disagree? Like, what order would you put these superheroes in?
Because I certainly don't agree with all of those.
There's a lot to argue, especially if I read all 25. Like, that would take forever, so I decided to cut down to 10.
Okay. Top 5 Marvel characters and why?
Okay, well, do you want me to read them and their description, or just read them all and then their descriptions? How would you like me to do this?
Go ahead, because I wrote my own thing, and it's a bit of a thing. So, read your people and their descriptions.
Okay, my first one was Wolverine.
I got him too.
Yes. Possessing animal keen senses, enhanced physical capabilities, power regenerative ability, 3 retractable claws, just badass, and a member of the X-Men. That's why I picked him. He's just fuzzy and strong and badass.
Much like myself.
Yeah, much like you. Sure, keep saying that.
Whatever, I'm taller.
I'm just like a big fan of X-Men, so I have a lot of X-Men characters on my list.
All right.
Number 2 for me is Dark Phoenix. I love Dark Phoenix.
I like her too.
I dressed up as Dark Phoenix.
Yes, you did.
Just like you dressed up as Wolverine. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, 3 times so far.
3 times. Your claws, I've had to replace your claws twice, and it's going to have to be a 3rd time.
Yeah.
Anyways, Jean Grey, Dark Phoenix, character in the X-Men who has telepathic and telekinetic powers and is an Omega level mutant. That's why she is one of my favorites.
I mean, if you not based on strength, but just based on mutant ability, she probably is the strongest character.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Next is Deadpool, Wade Wilson. He has accelerated healing factor, physical powers.
Smart ass.
He's just funny as fuck. He's just cool. I mean,
Constantly
2 swords,
breaks the fourth
guns,
wall.
He's just cool.
I like when he talks to the audience, because I mean, they do a wonderful job in the movies, but even in the comic books, he would turn and look, and it would be something happening in the comic book, but he would turn and look to the reader and talk directly to the reader.
He's just an absolute favorite of mine.
You reading me. This is what I'm thinking about.
Yes. Anyways, next on my list is Rogue. Love her. Probably my favorite X-Men character. She can absorb superpowers, like we talked about before, of anyone she touches. Her skin produces high voltage jolts. She probably won't be getting a boyfriend anytime soon.
Unless you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing like a little electric tickle.
And then last on my list, which is no freaking surprise, of course, is Thor. Not just because he's hot. Not just because he's hot and pretty, of course. Thor is an Asgardian god, super strong. He flies. He can manipulate the frickin' weather. God of thunder. Hello, thunder, lightning, whatever. He's so cool. He's just awesome. He kicks ass.
All
right, Gavin, I want to hear your list.
Okay, my top 5. I made it a little bit more of a narrative, if you will.
Of course you did. You like to talk.
Well, I like writing, basically. So, here's what I've got in my top 5.
Good, I can sit here and drink while you read.
Okay. First, we have Magneto. Arguably one of the most powerful mutants. His power is the manipulation of the electromagnetic field.
So you like the bad boys, huh?
Aside from being a living magnet, able to move metal objects by sheer will alone, this ability allows him to control metallic objects at the atomic level. He can manipulate metals into anything his heart and genius mind, by the way, desires.
You're telling me he can bend spoons?
He can make a spoon out of a nickel. So, this is how he was able to help Professor Charles Xavier build almost all of the technology and advanced equipment used by the X-Men. He even built a satellite base that orbited the Earth. It was called Asteroid M.
Wow.
As his canon developed, so did his powers. And as the Marvel creators worked their magic as the real world's understandings of
Tongue twister.
Magnetic.
Sally sold seashells by the seashore.
Yes, as the Marvel creators worked their magic as the real-world understandings of magnetic fields emerged, Magneto can manipulate the world around him on an atomic level. He also, in one storyline, ripped the adamantium casing around Wolverine's bones in an effort to defeat Wolverine. Turns out that this really just pissed him off.
Tried to declaw Wolverine.
Right. Which brings me to my next in the top 5, Wolverine. He's an enigmatic character, origins mostly unknown due to his time spent in the Weapon X program. As his powers began to manifest in his adolescence, he had enhanced strength, speed, stamina, dexterity, agility, balance, and reaction time. Also, superhuman senses, animal-like attributes such as like a heightened sense of smell, eyesight, and hearing. My favorite ability of his, though, healing factor. If injured, he heals almost instantly, which is why the scientists in the Weapon X program were able to encase his skeleton in molten adamantium.
Wow, he also wears a really cool jacket.
The molten adamantium.
I'm really glad that I didn't have to read him on my ranking of the strongest superheroes because I couldn't pronounce that word.
Well, I got you, baby.
Thank you. You would have just corrected me when I tried to say it anyways.
Exactly.
Just like my French words in Jacques Cousteau.
Which is hard enough for me as well, because, French is totally lost on me.
It's like, Gavin, what the fuck am I saying?
But I got all of these words on lock. So, the molten adamantium coated Wolverine's bones, which rendered him virtually indestructible. And even as Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, it was revealed that he always had the claws. They were just bone that they encased in adamantium. I've loved this character from the first time I saw him on a splash page. Nearly invulnerable, metal skeleton, the only thing in the Marvelverse that is comparable in strength to adamantium is vibranium, the oh-so-precious metal of Wakanda. That's just an aside. But Wolverine is awesome. But with his troubled past, memory loss, he would have been nowhere without the guidance and teaching of the next mutant on my list, Professor Charles Xavier. Professor X is the founder of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and the mutant team, the X-Men. One of the most powerful telepaths in the multiverse, he is able to read thoughts and minds of those around him. But cooler is the fact that he can manipulate people's thoughts and get them to do, think, see, or say whatever he wants. Thankfully, he's one of the good guys. He was a friend of Magneto, but they differed on their views on the subject of mutant rights. The creation of the X-Men comic book came as Stan Lee's basically interpretation of the civil rights movement. A brilliant way to portray a race relation in the United States by creating a race of people, the mutants, whom experience the same hate and prejudices that was rife in society of the 1960s. Professor X stood on the side of peaceful coexistence, while Magneto stood on the side of mutant superiority. Think of the times, Professor X was more of a Martin Luther King Jr. to Magneto's Malcolm X. But again, that's why Marvel stood apart. The issues were not black and white, so to speak, but as with most things, life exists in a gray area, and in between. Which is why I like one of my next favorite characters, Colossus.
I was thinking about Deadpool, how they made that song. It's like, and Colossus farted. You remember that? That's what I keep thinking of when you say that. I kind of want to play the song now.
You're killing me.
Sorry, keep going. Let's hear about Colossus. Are you hearing the song in your head right now?
Yes, and it's very distracting.
Oh, but it's so funny.
I'm like a quarter of the way through my story here. Okay,
keep going.
All right.
Keep going.
Marvel's literal Man of Steel, Pyotr Rasputin, also called Peter Rasputin, is a 6'7" gentle giant. Introduced in 1975, he could turn his skin into a steel-like metal, giving him superhuman strength, stamina, endurance, and obviously durability. It's also written into his canon that when he is steeled up, he is entirely self-sustained, not needing food, water, or even oxygen. Pretty amazing is that he's also believed to be a descendant of Grigory Rasputin. It was his Soviet descent that set him apart. When we were in the middle of the Cold War and Americans were still getting over the Red Scare, Lee chose to run this character as an opposite to what we collectively thought of the Russians. He was kind, compassionate, soft-spoken, yet strong and virtually invulnerable. He painted a different picture of who the Russians were. Okay, my last and probably favorite Marvel character is Iron Man. In the words of the MCU...
You just like a brilliant mind.
Exactly. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist... probable alcoholic. A man builds himself a suit to save his own life. Realizing the potential, he constantly builds and upgrades an arsenal that allows him to save the world. What I really like is that he is just a man using his intellect and technology to fight alongside superhuman or superpowered beings like the Avengers. He's just awesome. I don't want to gush, but Robert Downey Jr. also just really played that character so well.
Yes, he did. It was awesome.
I've always liked Iron Man, but that made Iron Man
better.
It defined the character. Okay, that's all we've got for tonight. But wasn't it marvelous?
It was very marvelous.
The holdup on the episode was entirely on me, I'd like to say.
Yup.
The more I read, the documentaries I watched, the history, the mythology was so much to deal with. I fell down so many rabbit holes of like, oh, I know that guy. Let me click on that. Oh, I know that guy. Let me click on that. And I was just like, wait a second, I'm trying to do a precise podcast here, so I have to slow my roll and just focus on the most core material. And I think we did a pretty good job. Let us know. So, when I was growing up, I was a geek. I'm Gavin Rapp, and I was a geek.
Are you confessing?
I am confessing. I loved it all.
I did too. I did as well.
Yeah. That's why we're married.
This is exactly why we're married. I've been looking for you my whole life.
Thank God we found each other, because Star Trek, Star Wars, Batman, Superman, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Super Friends. Needless to say, as I did research on the creation of the Marvel multiverse, I realized what made me a Marvel kid. You want to know?
Yeah, I do want to know.
It was Stan Lee and Company's vision of heroes in the real world. I asked myself that question. What would I do if I had superpowers? In almost every kitchen I've worked in, the conversation is prompted. If you have any superpower, what would it be? I'm quite certain you all have had similar conversations. What Marvel did, and has continued to do throughout mergers, acquisitions, changing names and aims, they brought the human to the forefront of superhuman. If you are superpowered, you still have to live in a town, a world, a universe that has problems from minute to catastrophic. It is the decisions that these humans make that alleviate or escalate these problems, just as in real life. It is the choices we make that define us. But the implications are much more gray than black and white, which is what Marvel was best at. If that ain't a kick in the sack, I don't know what is.
All right, everyone. Please be sure to like us on Facebook, Two Nuts in the Sack. And also, please subscribe and comment on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate it.
I swear that was not a robot talking.
I am not a robot. I am Julie.
Two Nuts in the Sack, signing off.
Sayonara.